Welcome back to IGN's History of Awesome, a year-by-year breakdown of big events that shaped pop culture. In 2002, Rockstar followed up the immensely popular GTA 3 with GTA Vice City. World War II fascination came to a head with the release of Battlefield 1942. And Square Enix changed what gamers expected from JRPGs with Kingdom Hearts. Over in movie land, Sam Raimi turned superhero movies into box office heavy hitters with Spider-Man, and Japanese horror came to America with The Ring. Let's reminisce about these events and more as we look back on the year 2002.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to IGN's History of Awesome series. This is 2002 edition. I'll be in the driver's seat this time. I'm Damon Hadfield. I'm joined by my friends, Joshua Yell, John Ryan,
Hi there.
Marty Sleva.
I'm going to pretend I'm in the driver's seat too.
No!
There's only one driver.
There's only one driver. You be my co-pilot.
Yeah. Chewbacca.
Gentlemen.
Can you do the roar?
That was okay. That was close.
It's like a tongue roll.
Sexy Chewbacca.
Yeah. Man, there's lots to talk about this year. Lots of movie, TV, video game news. As usual, let's start with the big video games of 2002. How about the 1-2 punch of Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion, released on the same day?
Yeah, same day. That's
November
insane.
17th.
Really?
They call it National Troid Day.
I don't think that's
You
true.
get Troids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get Troided on Troid
When I went to
Day?
the store didn't have them, I just went Troid Rage.
It had been 8 years since the last Metroid game, which was Super Metroid.
Yeah, insane. And it was one of those things where we all wanted a 2D game, and we did get that in Fusion, which was this awesome GBA original 2D Metroid game that had more of a story than people thought it would have. It had like characters and dialogue and stuff. But yeah, I think Prime was the big surprise that year because Nintendo had proven that they could make Mario work in 3D and Zelda work in 3D, but they hadn't proven how you make this series work in 3D. And what it delivered was one of the most immersive first-person games ever.
Yeah. Also, I thought at the time the most beautiful console game I'd ever seen.
Yeah, and you're not alone in thinking that. Just the gorgeous world that you're stranded on, and the subtle effects like the sort of the fog that'll envelop your visor, and the lights, the little flashes where you see Samus's face, and then exploring this really sad, decrepit planet. And there is action, there are puzzles, but a lot of it is just sort of soaking in the atmosphere and looking up for the first time when it's raining and having the raindrops fall on your visor. It was this really gorgeous, powerful experience that showcased like, oh man, I mean, this is, again, easy to forget, but like back in the day, it's like, oh yeah, Nintendo and Nintendo hardware could push visuals and art direction to a level that no one else could match.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss those days when Nintendo was at the most technologically advanced video game company.
Yeah, because they still have the art direction down. It's just they don't quite have the power that the other boxes have.
You can't get those peas.
They can't. There's not enough peas in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was really.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it was just interesting how they took, sort of what Super Metroid did, and then even like what Castlevania Symphony of the Night did in creating this genre that was primarily 2D, and how they adapted it into this first-person 3D world with the puzzles and with vantage points where you're like, well, I'm going to be able to get there at a certain point, but I don't have the ability yet. And smart moves like pulling the camera out to third person when you turn into the morph ball and going through these cool tracks. Just a really, really incredible. Risky move for them that's where they take one of their tentpole franchises, and it totally paid off, obviously.
Also, they took, not only did they take a 2D game and put it in 3D, but they put it in first person.
Yeah.
So you don't even see your character.
Yeah,
for most of the
yeah.
game.
And obviously a little later on, we got the third person one in Other M, but we try not to talk about that one. Yeah. Wasn't a great game. Yeah. And then same thing with
moments.
It had its moments. And then same thing with Fusion. We all bemoan the lack of, any sort of Metroid proper game. Like we saw that we're getting that sort of arena shooter thing at E3.
yeah.
And no,
Blast
I don't
ball
want that.
or
I don't want
whatever.
blast ball.
I don't want that.
No one asked
Blast
for
ball
this.
out of here.
Yeah. No. It's soccer.
Yeah.
Just call it what it is.
Yeah, to think, I don't know if the series has ever had two games launch on the same day that are both just equally amazing. Like we'll get two Pokemon games launched on the same day, but they're sort of the same game.
Like,
whereas
You
with
bite your tongue.
I'm sorry.
A console and a handheld version launched on the same day, and both are excellent.
Yeah, like that's unprecedented before and after. I don't know if that's how precedents work.
Let's just call it that it is. And
Yeah, and move on. But yeah, really, I had certain people in this office not only favorite Metroid game, but favorite game.
at all.
Yeah, I know Sam Claiborne and Per Schneider are both massive fans of it.
Yeah.
They're not here though.
So, No one.
We'll just speak for them.
Just imagine
These are your
their
favorite games.
faces on our head.
Yeah,
on our
just do
bodies.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
Metroid Prime got a 9.5 on IGN, and it has a 97 on Metacritic.
That's not a bad game.
No.
Right there.
We underrated it.
yeah.
Apparently,
Craig Harris.
So it is the highest rated Metroid game, and obviously one of the highest rated games of all time.
Yeah.
It's really, really
It's
good.
no Infinity Blade 2.
Nope.
I got a 10.
Well, now I'm gonna have to steal games to go back through it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. So I guess I get my 2D Metroids mixed up. Metroid Zero came after Fusion and was
A sort of a remake of 2.
with new stuff in
With
it.
new
'cause
stuff
there was
in
not
it.
the Zero.
Yeah, yeah. Or a remake of the original, excuse
Yeah.
me. But yeah, it was weird because we got those two games relatively close together, the two traditional 2D Metroid games for the handheld, and Fusion was an entirely new thing, whereas Zero Mission, yes, it was a remake, but it was very much like they added so much to it to where it was kind of ostensibly a new game. Fusion had an interesting, this like Dark Samus sort of imposter that was running around the space station. And again, really good puzzles. Wasn't quite up to the level of Super Metroid, in my opinion, but honestly, few games are.
Yeah.
But yeah, an incredible, really cool. I mean, for fans of that, like, I don't know what other series could actually do that. Like, maybe if there was a Mario 3DS and Wii U game that released on the same day, or Zelda, but like, that's probably never going to happen on a Sony console.
I mean,
like,
Assassin's Creed tried, but it just didn't.
yeah, tried with Rogan, and with Liberation 3, and then Rogan.
Oh,
and, yeah.
But not to the same level of
No,
success.
Oh God,
not.
no. Oh no, absolutely not.
Well, a couple years prior to 2002, Grand Theft Auto 3 was released and became quite the phenomenon.
Yeah.
Like
So-
the game of games.
Yeah. Lots of people who were not gamers were playing Grand Theft Auto 3.
Yep.
So in 2002, they followed that up with GTA Vice City.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the GTA 3 laid the groundwork for all these games, but I think Vice City is the thing that injected it with the sort of the energy and the
like
pop culture.
It GTA-ified it. From
Yeah,
3.
it's the thing that took a couple radio stations and then all of a sudden it made this iconic suite of classic seminal 80s music, and
Oh my
that
God,
you
it
could
was so good.
hopping from playlist to playlist, these different genres, pulling in inspirations from Miami Vice and Carlito's Way and Scarface.
And you get a bunch of 80s like A-ish, but like also B and C movie stars.
Oh,
throughout
yeah,
the cast.
totally,
You had
yeah.
Gary Busey, really. I mean, Ray Liotta was the main guy. He was still pretty famous at the time.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
Dennis Hopper was in there, which
Yeah.
was great. Oh man. it's
Yeah, really,
so weird.
just amazing. The thing, no one remembers 3 story or characters. I mean, your character was a, at the time, nameless, silent protagonist.
Yeah.
Whereas here, you had, the voice of the lead character of Goodfellas,
Yep.
voicing Tommy Vercetti, and then you had this sort of awesome cast with Lance and Ken Rosenberg, and
Yep.
this amazing story and this amazing world, and such an incredible set. Like, the Liberty City didn't really have a definition to it.
It
in
didn't
3.
have like character. It was just buildings.
Yeah, but I mean, Vice City,
oh,
which
man.
is
Vice City was like a
this
person.
gorgeous '80s Miami.
Yeah.
You're getting apartments. You're doing all sorts of bad things with drugs.
Crazy
Don't
drug
do
cult
drugs in real
mansions.
life. Yeah,
Movie studios.
yeah, just really, really phenomenal.
Yeah. It's probably still my favorite GTA.
Yeah. I remember I stayed home. If my parents are ever watching this, I'm retroactively sorry by 13 years. I totally faked sick the day Vice City came out.
Nice.
And I stayed home. I played it all.
Wait, how old were you? You sound like you were too young to be playing GTA Vice City.
I was like 15.
Yeah, see.
I know, the box said 17.
Yeah.
Excuse
And
me
for
for
the
going
two,
under my... Which I was absolutely not,
Yeah.
but still.
Yeah, it also did a great job of, like we talked about when we talked about GTA 3, of sort of, you can go down this guided path of a really cool story, or you can just mess around in the world and cause
The
a
game
muck.
was so big, it was ridiculous. The game experience varied from person to person. Like, I'm just there for the story, but I would go to my friend and I'd be, how are you running the story? He's like, I haven't done anything, but I've like stolen 100 different cars, and I did this, and it's like
We got
rocket
3
launcher.
tanks
And I got a
parked in the
helicopter.
front.
Yeah.
It's like, he doesn't care. It's just this open world of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was, it was just like everyone was looking up those cheats to where it's just like, if I just want to go in and see how much, chaos I can cause before I get arrested or killed, like I'm going to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, they pretty much make you a Batman villain.
Yeah, pretty much.
I feel like it might... I don't know, people would probably crucify me for saying this, but I think Vice City is probably the best of the pre-HD GTAs, because like it's cool because like they all kind of build on each other. Like 3 is it's the first time it's in 3D, and then Vice City gives you this huge world with like well-acted characters and like an actual feeling to the world itself. But then San Andreas kind of gets a little too big to be manageable, so I feel like Vice City is like the perfect slice of what pre-360 and PS3.
Yeah, especially like San
GTAs
Andreas,
were.
just like, it trying so many different things. And
Yeah,
it's sort of
which is great.
Yeah,
but it goes in too many directions.
Yeah, I mean, it tries to tell an LA story, a San Francisco story, and a
Yeah.
Vegas story, which is a little. Yeah, I mean, it's ambitious as hell, but Vice City is very focused on telling this one really interesting story about these small set of characters, and it does it phenomenally.
It was a rad game.
Yeah,
Real good game.
Real good game.
2002 saw the beginning of the Battlefield series.
Yeah,
With
1942.
Battlefield
Right.
1942.
Yeah, which was it's definitely over time. Call of Duty has overtaken. Or overtook.
Like Battlefield is still going strong.
Oh, Battlefield's
today.
still absolutely
13
going
years
strong.
later.
And I mean, now we're the spin-offs into Battlefront this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, 1942 delivered multiplayer on a sense of scope and scale that like no shooter before I'd ever played. Like I'd played a lot of arena-based multiplayer games like Unreal Tournament and Quake 3. But like just the sprawling expanse of these maps and the like, do whatever you want. You want to hop in that plane? Go ahead.
Well, I thought it
take a
was-
Jeep? That's fine.
Yeah. I thought it was always really interesting to pop into a server like with a group of my friends and see how they were all operating. Like, they'd make their own little squads and they'd formulate like really clear battle strategies. Whereas me and my buddies would just like get 2 Jeeps and smash them into each other as hard as we can. Like,
Yeah, it was. It's sort of the epitome of how video games can be very competitive type things, or video games can just be sandboxes to do dumb stuff in.
Yeah.
Which I love. I like being dumb.
Yep.
Yeah.
Were you playing 1942 on PC?
Yes.
It was a PC exclusive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't made it to console yet.
Well, I don't think consoles could handle all them players.
Yeah, honestly,
it
the
was
online
what?
infrastructure in 2002.
16 or 32?
I think it was 32.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. No, it was actually 1,942 players. One for each year ever.
Oh my God.
Not ever.
Not-
No. There were years before.
there were years
about
before
that.
one?
Yeah, it's true.
Debatable.
We start taking out players for the negative years.
There has been a Battlefield something released every year since 2002, even if it's just an expansion.
Yeah. that is
A
insane.
year has not gone by where there hasn't been a Battlefield something released.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of one of the first times that we noticed that happening too, though.
Yeah.
Like Call of Duty was a couple of years between each releases in the initial stages. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like it was Battlefield and then it was, Vietnam was the second one?
Yeah, we had Vietnam. Yeah, Vietnam. We had 43. We had Heroes.
Eventually 2142, which they should totally redo.
That had so many more players, though. They had 200 more players.
It did, yeah. It's 200 more
that was
players.
the 21. I did a math joke.
Yeah. It's good.
I've done a lot of these videos today.
Just take a nap, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So Battlefield's an EA
Yeah.
property. EA already had Medal of Honor. And they were
Yeah.
like, we need another World War II shooter.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing. Is that was Medal of Honor had sort of it made a huge splash immediately.
Yeah.
And was sort of the first really huge cinematic World War II shooter. But then it wasn't able to find its footing, and it was never really a contender for multiplayer games. And it sort of Call of Duty took the crown from it very quickly in terms of single player. So I think Battlefield was there to provide these massive. Sort of giant open map warfare multiplayer experiences that really no one else was delivering at the time. And it was a thing. I remember my friends who were primarily PC gamers compared to the ones who were console gamers. Like that was one of the things. Like that and World of Warcraft a couple of years later were the two of the things where it was like, yeah, you might have an Xbox and a PS2 and a GameCube, but you can't do this on your consoles.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is always really cool to me.
So this year we had Battlefield Hardline.
Yeah, earlier this year.
Before that, it was Battlefield 4, obviously.
Yeah.
And I remember Battlefield 3. Why can't I remember Battlefield 2?
What if they just skipped it? There was a Battlefield.
No, there was
There was
Battlefield 2.
So
Yeah,
at some point they rebooted it and they just started off
I
with
believe it was
Battlefield.
basically just 2 was just like World War II, but again, and prettier and better and more people.
Okay.
And then there were the bad companies in between 2
so
and
that
3.
it was just farther.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 is
A lot
like
of
way far back.
Yeah, a lot of confusing numbering and naming.
Yeah.
Video games can be weird sometimes. Yeah.
On very rare occasions, video games are weird.
I think we're going to talk about another series soon that has some weird numbering issues.
Why don't we talk about that right now?
That
I
was
think
a
you're
hell of a
referring to
segue.
Great
Kingdom
job,
Hearts.
both of you.
Yes. Oh, I thought you were going to say a number afterwards. I didn't realize that was just the name of the game.
The first Kingdom Hearts was
called
released
Kingdom Hearts.
in 2002.
No, the numbers didn't start until later.
Yeah.
Yeah, 358 divided by 2 days or however.
Why?
Yeah.
Can someone explain that to me? I
2.8.
never understood.
2.8 is coming out.
Re-releases.
Nobody can explain.
2.9.
I'm sure Ryan Clements has a long-winded
Yeah.
explanation.
So he will talk forever about that, but sadly
Yeah,
he's not
those
here.
games. They've. It's one of those things that has no business working.
Yeah,
Like
even
the
if-
idea of, hey, let's mix Square's JRPG crazy Final Fantasy characters with these classic Disney characters in Disney World, but let's add this new story that involves like your heart having an actual like personification and this darkness and
it's like no, it's fine. Just throw it all in. We'll make it work.
Yeah, and it does.
And it did.
And I don't know how it works.
People love it.
But it introduced Sora, Riku, and Kairi as these 3 characters that people have become obsessed with over the past decade, and then made Mickey Mouse like a badass, and like
not something I'd ever expected to see.
it made you want to hang out with Donald and Goofy, and then all of a sudden you're going to these Nightmare Before Christmas levels, and this all of these rad worlds, but then you're fighting in a Coliseum against Sephiroth, and Cloud's there, and he's got like a bat wing for some reason.
Like everything's connected, it's fine. And to be fair, I've always wanted to hang out with Goofy, not so much Donald Duck.
Why? Because he doesn't wear pants? You seem like the kind of guy that
No,
doesn't wear
he
pants.
seems to get angry way too much.
Yeah.
He seems really angry.
Yeah.
Very easily upset.
I mean, it
Goofy's
also-
just laid back.
It also gave us the Keyblade, which has become like an iconic weapon
Yep.
in video games, and there's so many variations.
Yeah.
You always love the original.
Oh no, absolutely, this OG. And it was like, I mean, it got in really good, good voice actors, like Haley Osment.
They had a lot of the original, like the actual voice actors for the Disney characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you look, like you're looking at the key art of Kingdom Hearts 1, and Sora does look very like young and childish. And as that series has grown, like it has gotten to sort of, as the fans have obviously gotten 10 years older,
Right.
it's gotten into sort of darker, more mature themes. But that original one was really sort of a nice, like wholesome trek through all of these cool, iconic worlds that no game, this is before Disney Infinity, and so no game was really like this celebration of everything Disney as a whole. Like we had some of those platformers in the 16-bit generation, like Mickey Mania and Magical Quest.
But those are just Disney games, right?
Yeah, those and whereas this was just like this, like you're gonna go to all these, you're gonna have the Peter Pan world and Agrabah and the Lion King level, and and it's the say what you will about some of the weird offshoots and their weird names, but the core 2 games have withstood the test of time, and they've just had HD collections come out recently, and people love them. And God, Kingdom Hearts 3 is one of the most anticipated games on IGN. I can't wait for it.
Someday. Next year, 2 years?
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
During
That's
the
the
year,
one. That's
during
what I
the
was
year that
thinking
future
of.
Battlefield takes place.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I don't know, that trailer at E3 was wild.
awesome.
It was
Yeah.
And then the reaction it got was
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, it looked great, but like also like, who knows when we'll see anything out of that?
It'll be
when we see that next Zelda.
tomorrow.
Okay, cool. They're coming in.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, today we have Disney Infinity, so we're more used to seeing Disney characters hang out with all these other properties. But I think back then it was just so weird to see like Final Fantasy characters with Disney characters.
Well, because it was kind of before we saw like the merging of even one brand with other stuff. Like, I mean, now we see Marvel crossing over with everything.
I don't even know, was it Square or Square Enix in 2002?
I think it was just Square. I think it was pre-Enix. Pre-Nix.
Yeah. Pre-Nix.
Pre-Nix and post-Nix.
Yeah. It's pretty good. As the story goes, Square wanted to make something like Mario 64, but were afraid that only Disney characters could rival the appeal of Mario. So they started negotiations with Disney, ended up with Kingdom Hearts, but of course it's not anything like Mario 64.
No.
It's just a Final Fantasy game with Disney characters.
I don't know if I'd want to see Square trying to make a Mario 64 clone.
I mean, I interviewed Tetsuya Nomura like a year or 2 ago, and I think I asked him about sort of like it was on a Mario anniversary, and sort of asked him about like what his thoughts were on the Mario series, and he said like in his lifetime of making games, seeing Mario 64 for the first time was the moment where he was like, all right, we got to start rethinking things, because this is totally blew my mind. They're totally doing something different. And he did say like Mario 64 was in his head during the designing of Kingdom Hearts as something like you want to sort of like a pinnacle you want to reach. And not, obviously it's not a 3D platformer, but in terms of how do you create an interesting
something so
3D
visually
world.
stimulating.
I don't see
Interesting.
how it could be inspired by Mario, because jumping as Sora sucks. I can't tell you how many times like the Tarzan levels, I was like falling. I was like, come on!
He's got such big shoes too.
Yeah,
like,
you think-
is that how jumping
How did he
works?
even
You jump
miss?
higher, you jump higher with big shoes? You want to say about big shoes?
So.
They're full of
MJ's got big
springs.
shoes.
You don't jump
so.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got us out of there. Don't worry.
Do you know where the kingdom comes in the title Kingdom Hearts? From Disney's Animal Kingdom theme park.
No.
Oh.
Interesting.
Animal Kingdom
Wait,
Hearts,
did
the
that
gory
open the
version.
same year that it released?
No, but like they were fans of the theme park and like making this Disney
So
game
that
and
was
wanted
where
to work
they-
that in. there.
Oh,
But
that's
the-
interesting.
Where does the Hearts part come from? Oh, because it's
don't
the
have
heart
it.
There
theme
you
of the
go.
game. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Answer
That kind of, I'm not gonna
answer
lie,
at
that
the
kind
top
of
the
sours
same.
me.
Why?
Because I don't know, I feel like that's just such like blatant product time. It's like in Wayne's World where it's like Pepsi. I don't know. It bugs me.
I think it's more innocent. It's Japanese developers who are fans of all things Disney, just wanting to
like, hey, this is a naming convention that works.
Fair enough. All right. If they're just earnest fans of the series, as long as it wasn't Disney being like, hey, we got this park opening, you should totally open. You should totally name it.
You're this close from striking it from the history of awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Switch it to
Let's go to the history of awful.
I will turn this couch around.
All right. In 2002, Microsoft launched Xbox Live.
Yeah. Which is, again, it's something to think about, like, well, of course Xbox Live existed beforehand, or of course everyone's always been online.
There was a time in our lives when Xbox Live did not exist.
It did not exist, no.
Well, we just didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's the real issue.
No, but there was a time where it didn't launch alongside Xbox. I mean,
it came a year after the Xbox.
Yeah, and Xbox Live, along with Halo 2, Halo 2 coming out a year or two after, introduced what modern online gaming is. And a lot of the features that modern online gaming has that we sort of just take for granted, of matchmaking and lobbies and chat and being able to party up. And it was a risky move on Microsoft's part because the Dreamcast had tried to be an online system and failed.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, it was to the market a little bit early and it just had dial-up and like that wasn't really working. And then PS2 did have an online adapter and like you could play SOCOM on it, but like I don't think nothing was to the level.
Well, that's the thing. They had an adapter. The Xbox had a broadband adapter built into it.
Yeah, it was built in. Yeah, that was one of the reasons why it was so big.
Yeah.
That's
that's an example of real forward thinking from Microsoft.
Yeah, absolutely. And it showed where as Xbox Live evolved and became not only like an auxiliary component of gaming, but as when you booted up a 360, like this was like your sort of online destination.
Yeah, I mean it's a necessary component of just owning a console.
Yeah,
like not necessarily the paid version, but
Yeah.
like still it's something that's like as the years went on, you had to have it immediately. Like you couldn't get away from it.
For the first time, at least on consoles, you had a friends list. You had one identity across all games that you played. You could voice chat with your friends.
That was the tough thing of a lot of us were sort of younger. And we made some dumb choices with our names.
Gamer tags.
Yeah, shouldn't have written down McBiggity that long ago. I didn't think I'd ever have to say it on a camera.
But now you do. Almost every day.
Almost every day. But it was, there were a lot of games for the original Xbox that supported it, and sports games and shooters. But yeah, it was Halo 2 that really was the game where it was like, well, this is something that
this is life now. This is what everything's going to be for the next forever.
Yeah, and like we mentioned the year Halo 2 came out in 2004, which we somehow already filmed because I don't know how anything works. We mentioned how it was when Halo 2 came out. It was the #1 most played game on Xbox Live for 2 years until Gears of War came out on a whole different platform.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think how quickly Microsoft was able to get it right with Xbox Live, whereas like you look at a company like Nintendo and you're like, you're still not doing online right?
Yeah.
How is this possible?
Don't even.
Someday.
How do I have to give you a weird code to enter to play my Mario Maker level?
I don't know. Microsoft made a big gamble they bet on the future, they bet on broadband, built it into the console, launched Xbox Live, and that worked out real well for them.
Yeah.
But then look at Xbox One. They again tried to bet on the future, and nope,
Yep.
that totally did not go.
Not only did they have to do a 180, but it was eventually like, well, disconnecting. No one wants their Xbox looking at them and doing weird things.
Oh, well, I mean, maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but today you turn on your Xbox One, your PS4, very similar online environments. You can see what your friends are playing. There's like game stores online where you can buy new games, and that's all because of Xbox Live.
Yep.
Xbox
Yeah,
Live
and I mean,
all that.
the 360, one of the things that defined it were the awesome downloadable Summer of Arcade games that, stuff like like Meat Boy and Braid and Limbo and Shadow Complex and these games that were like, it was the rise of the indie, which doesn't really have to be even a word anymore because now it's just games are games, but it's like you can make a smaller game on a smaller budget and not have to sell a bajillion copies because you're skirting around publishers or skirting around having to physically produce the games. And Xbox Live was sort of the gateway of that happening in the home and the console space. Thanks, Xbox.
Thanks.
Way to go.
I did not remember that both the Resident Evil remake of the original and Resident Evil Zero came out the same year.
That is weird.
On GameCube.
It's a lot of Resident Evil in one year.
Yeah.
But anyway, the first one to come out was the Resident Evil remake, which was an incredible game.
It was great.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the, at the time, it was like one of the most beautiful, terrifying games ever made. It like perfected those pre-rendered backgrounds. And it took that game that we all remembered playing that was all pixely and blocky and polygonal. polygonal. And just made it absolutely gorgeous and terrifying, and reworked the puzzles and reworked the combat and sort of the two-character scenario in such a way that we look back, and if you're into like classic survival horror Resident Evil, that's most people's favorite game in the series. Like by the time 4 rolled around, it changed things enough in terms of sort of redefining it as an action game.
Yeah, which, I mean, for the times, like I suppose that was acceptable and like almost kind of necessary, because like you couldn't have just made Resident Evil 2 or 3 again.
Yeah, although they're doing that with 2.
Well, but I'm fine with that because 2 is great.
Yeah, I mean, even though it was a fantastic, phenomenal game, probably the best Resident Evil at the time, it didn't sell particularly well. And I think that may be what convinced Capcom to move into a more action-oriented style with Resident Evil 4, which again is another great game.
Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah, and Resident Evil 4 is like, I mean, that might be one of the most influential games that of the past 15 years. Yeah, but it was an interesting. I think part of the reason it didn't sell super well was because it was locked to the GameCube, whereas Resident Evil 4 eventually came to PS2.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Resident Evil Zero was an interesting. That's a easily forgotten entry, even though the remake's coming out very soon.
Yeah.
Is it
HD. Early next year?
I think so. Yeah.
That's when the last
It's interesting too, because like canonically, that's like actually a really important one too. Isn't that the one where they explain like where the T virus comes from?
Yeah, it takes place before Resident Evil. Yeah. That's Rebecca, and she's on a train with a cool guy named Billy who's got weird tribal tats.
Ex-con.
Yeah.
He killed a bunch of people, so he's a good guy.
Yeah. So they introduced the partner zapping system, so you can switch back and forth.
The zapping system. I forgot about that. Yeah. It's all on a train. Yeah. It was very. That was a weird game, but
yeah. See, I started playing that one, and then it like I just played the Resident Evil remake, which is a masterpiece, and so I was like,
I think I got to the very end and just got so frustrated when they were like, okay, and the bad guys just turned into a giant slug monster. I was like, nope, done, throwing the controller away. I can't.
You threw the controller away?
Did you crumple it?
I crumpled it into a ball and threw it into the garbage.
You should have just gotten rid of the game.
No, I just put it down. I kept the controller, I just put it down on the desk and then probably get up and ate an entire pizza. That's usually how I operate when I am upset at a game.
It was weird to me just to see Resident Evil on the GameCube, because I always see it as this like very wholesome console. With like,
wholesome.
It's a Nintendo console.
Yeah,
the GameCube.
Because a lot of the games I played on GameCube were like Wind Waker and like
Sunshine.
And like all these like great. So to get that game on there is like this like mature game with all this bloody stuff coming out of this thing. It's like a Pixar movie. Suddenly having like blood spurts. I'm like,
what's going on here? Yeah. It had it added such free. Like I knew the first Resident Evil front and back, but then replaying this one, it had like the crazy lady in the basement. This is terrifying.
In the remake?
In remake.
Yeah.
It was never in the original Resident Evil. That was
so
horrifying.
good. You can hear chains coming. Oh man,
I don't like that at all. I don't want to talk about that anymore.
Let's not think about it. And the dogs looked so much worse.
Oh my god, and Crimson Heads.
Oh yeah.
You killed a zombie, you came back and it was back as a super zombie that just ran after you and didn't care.
Yeah.
You kidding? Get out of here.
No, thank you. Crumple, throw away.
Resident Evil Zero was actually first shown off as an N64 game at E3.
I'm really glad it did not end up as one.
I know.
That is.
I don't think
strange.
they could fit it on the cartridge.
Oh God, no.
You could
barely,
it'd be
the first
Resident
two
Evil 2 on the
cartridge games.
Yeah. Remember how the Resident Evil 2 cartridge was literally heavier than other games?
Yep.
See, I played it on PlayStation, so I didn't.
So did I, but I remember a stupid buddy of mine who didn't have a PlayStation.
I was one of those stupid buddies.
Oh, sorry, buddy.
It's okay.
But like, you would pick up the cart and it was like legitimately like. I don't know.
It was probably like
I was about to say a pound, but probably not a pound.
No, it was probably
heavier.
like 4
But it was like
ounces.
noticeably.
You're like,
heavier.
oh.
Yeah. We should have how much does this game weigh off?
Like a betting
gold
pool.
cartridges?
Yeah.
Gold carts? Yeah.
Do gold carts weigh more? Can we make an actual solid 24 karat gold cart?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to do that.
Okay, but you're in charge of stealing all the gold to do that.
I'm gonna smelt a bunch of people's wedding
Probably.
rings.
It's fine.
Or melt? What's smelting?
Smelting?
No, you're
Smelting.
correct. It's smelting.
Anyway.
Sorry.
All right, come with me over to the movie area of 2002.
Kingdom movies.
Yep. Spider-Man.
swing on over, perhaps, to the movies.
That's good.
Webhead.
The first of the many, many modern Spider-Man movies.
Yep.
Came out in 2002. Directed by Sam Raimi. Generally considered to be a good movie, I think.
I loved it.
It was a great movie, especially for the time. Of course, now we have a lot of like what we consider better movies and stuff, but at the time, we really didn't get a lot of movies like that. And it was very smart to take a director who kind of had this horror bent, who had a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
Kind of like
seemed like an odd choice.
Yeah,
at the
kind of like
time.
Tim Burton, who when he did the '89 Batman, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but it worked out really well, and so did this. The cast was great, like Tobey Maguire. A lot of people like maybe very divisive about him.
I was hit or miss on him, but he pulled it off. I
thought it was great. Yeah,
I thought Tobey Maguire was great.
The emotion into the Uncle Ben scene like breaks my
Oh
heart.
man!
At the time when we weren't tired of seeing that on screen so many times.
Yeah.
Really cool.
To be honest, we've only seen it twice.
Yeah, true.
Like it's not so many times; it's twice.
We're tired of it already. Twice is enough.
They got it right the
screen.
first time.
Right.
That's the issue.
And really, it was the first like primary colored, like unashamed to be primary colored superhero. Because before that, you had X-Men. All black leather. You know, the comics, it's like yellow and blue and green.
Well,
and
they
stuff.
make a joke about it in the X-Men movies. Like, well, what do you want? Yellow spandex.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, kind of.
So now,
That's what you're supposed to wear.
So Spider-Man really sort of opened the door for movies like Avengers, and stuff like that to have these colorful costumes and for that to work.
And to be like, you can look like the comics. It's fine,
Yeah.
and you could still be like believable and taken seriously.
That first Spider-Man costume looked so good. It was a little shiny in places, but it looked really good. It's very true to the comics. Of course, they didn't do the web shooters, but in the long run, that didn't really impact anything.
No.
It sort of dialed down how much of a scientific genius Peter Parker was, but still, they played up elements of his life. Aunt May, she was great. Every scene she had, they played her like just the right amount. Especially in the sequel, she was there to sort of pick him up when he needed it at the end. I think Spider-Man 2 is probably the best Spider-man movie.
Yeah,
hands down.
Yeah, it's pretty unanimous.
Dr. Octopus is phenomenal.
I'm just so mad they killed off Alfred Molina.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, how could they do that?
I mean, he could I always have this theory in my head that they cut away and that his generator lets off a pulse of energy that reactivate his tentacles that drag him out right under the bay and give him CPR, and he's like, ugh, okay.
I'm gonna say to you,
he uses his memory that he just made up with Spider-Man, and he's like, I'm gonna get Peter Parker. And,
Or what if the tentacles just became sentient?
And then,
Like it was just like a dead body. That would be Sam Raimi. That's what I'm saying.
I love that.
And it was the horror of when he first he was unconscious on the table, remember the hospital scene? And they came alive.
They dragged the nurse and her nails.
It's terrifying.
Classic Sam Raimi.
Someone tried to cut it off with a chainsaw, which is a little Evil Dead nod, and he picked up and threw him across the room.
But it was similar even in the first one, even with Willem Dafoe going completely insane and turning into the Green Goblin.
The actors, and this Willem Dafoe is the Green Goblin.
Oh, he's phenomenal. It's a great choice. It's just such a shame that they put the stupid
He did look like an evil
hockey
Power
mask
Ranger, but he still had the Goblin glider. He had the pumpkin bomb.
Yeah.
It was great. And they had like the hero's choice at the end, which is kind of something they really changed from the comic books, but of just Mary Jane or the kids. And of course, he saves both because he's Spider-Man. But
I would choose Mary Jane.
So good.
Yeah.
I would choose the kids. Because by then, had they already shared that real cool upside down smooch?
Yes. That was iconic.
In the rain.
Yeah.
Don't forget in the rain.
Sure. That's how I try to kiss girls like that for the first time.
Upside down in the rain.
Upside
every
down
time.
in the rain.
Hold on.
Yeah.
If you're on a date, if you're on a date and it's not raining and you can't get upside down, you're immediately just like, nope, not happening. Sorry.
Spider-Man was the #1 movie of the year in North America. It remains the #1 Spider-Man movie and the #1 superhero origin story at the domestic.
All of those should be correct.
Yeah.
Also in theaters in 2002 was The Ring, which is a damn scary movie.
Yeah,
thank you.
It was a real spooky
Thank
movie.
you.
The movie's real scary.
To this day, if I take a photo where like my face is blurry or one of my friends, I'm like, it happened. You're gonna die. You got 10 days. It was 10 days, right?
No, it's just that Instagram didn't focus. I'm not gonna actually die.
No, it's fine, really.
Yeah. One of the important things that this movie did was sort of bring Japanese horror to the States.
Yep.
It started that trend of
Ringu.
a lot of remake. Yeah, this is a remake of Ringu, and in the following years we had movies like The Grudge and The Signal.
I feel like that's a good and a bad thing. Because
Well,
a
yeah,
lot of the versions
none of
that we
them
did
are
here in
as
the
good as
States are
The Ring.
terrible.
This was a good movie though. Like
The
this,
Ring is excellent
The
movie.
Ring is a great
Yeah.
movie. Like it wasn't one of those movies. It wasn't like a quick cash in, and it did bring a lot of those really interesting sort of colloquial horror elements of Japanese traditions and culture to the American forefront, which I think has influenced a ton of horror that we've seen across all mediums since then. I mean, we saw stuff like, this is, I think that the success of Ring is you can correlate that all the way to the huge boom that was PT, and then eventually sort of didn't become Silent Hills. But
I mean, the sort of re-rise of horror as a viable genre.
Yeah.
Because in the '90s, there were a couple of maybe direct DVD
Blair Witch
slasher
was
flicks.
the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't that 2000 though?
I think it was the late '90s.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, but still, you didn't really see, actual horror movies. You saw campy, wacky movies in the '90s, like Jason Takes Manhattan and The Nightmare
Jason
on Elm
X.
Street to the millionth time, and Jason in Space. They'd become a parody of themselves, and they were campy. But with The Ring and maybe with Blair Witch 2, that really took horror and like be like, no, like let's make this scary again.
Yeah.
And people loved it.
Yeah, it's really showed how scary little girls can be.
Yeah.
We already knew that.
The Ring, like The Grudge.
Wait, should I not be kissing people upside out anymore?
Not little girls,
Yeah,
but
Time out, both of you.
it really I love the conceit of The Ring,
Yeah.
and of just you watch this. It was something that could have happened to you, like, hey, let's watch this tape,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
you see this thing in the well, and then
Yeah.
just your life just goes downhill from there.
Everything goes real
Oh
terrible.
man, and she was just so scary, and the way she
God.
moved.
Oh
and that,
yeah, how they like remove frames of it a little bit.
Yeah. And she would like kind of jump, and I remember that when she killed the guy in the end.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was just on my
Yeah.
pins and needles.
That movie is PG-13. I think that's
No.
Is it? Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Really?
It's so
Wow.
scary.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know.
Don't take kids to see this.
Yeah, I know.
And yeah,
no,
like-
it's like it's a common, like kids love things that are like forbidden. They love like testing the water.
Sure,
Things
sure.
that have been like Bloody Mary, like go in the bathroom, turn off the lights,
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
Bloody Mary 3 times. When
Yeah.
you turn on the light, that she'll be in the mirror.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like there's this video. You're not supposed to watch it, but let's watch
God.
it.
Yeah.
That sort of it just works really well.
Brian Altano's favorite scene are all those horses that die.
Oh,
All those dead horses?
that almost killed the movie entirely for me.
Why? You a fan of horses?
I still haven't watched it since the first viewing.
Because of the horses?
Well, part of it, yeah. It was just like, oh my
Yeah.
God, how is this happening?
I could not sleep after I saw it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was at least a day and a half before I was comfortably able to be like, all right, I can be okay.
Yeah.
I'll
And
be
Damon, like
fine.
you mentioned in our Pirates of the Caribbean talk, it's crazy that Gore Verbinski directed The Ring, and then the next year he had Pirates of the Caribbean,
Oh God, that's
Yeah,
right.
which is weird.
You don't see the natural transition?
Children's horror or horror about children. Children's
Yeah.
fantasy action.
Yeah, that kind of works.
Totally the same.
Yeah.
Over on TV in 2002, we were watching Firefly.
Yeah.
I guess just that one year we were watching Firefly.
No.
It was just that one year. What a shame.
Yeah. Yeah, that's still a show I go back to. Like, if I start dating someone and they haven't seen that, I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're gonna enjoy this, and we
Yeah.
can watch this in like one weekend.
This is the test.
This is the litmus test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's space, it's cowboys.
Yeah.
Like you can't.
Yeah,
but it's not space cowboys.
It's not
so
Space
no
Cowboys.
joke.
No. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
the characters and the casting, are so iconic. And,
Yeah.
there's so many episodes that people remember, and so many amazing guest spots.
Well, it's easy that there's so many episodes because there's like 9 of them.
There's 9 episodes, all of which I remember. Yeah, just the banter between that, like Joss Whedon coming off the success of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he just continuing to develop that sort of that voice that ended up going, that's what made the Avengers, is that sort of voice and that playful banter, but that also appreciation of really rad female characters and really interesting tortured villains.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what we should obviously mention about the show is that it had a very hard time getting aired at Fox.
Well,
a lot
Fox
of,
goofed hard.
Yeah, goofed is an interesting word, but it's they wanted it to start on a more action-oriented,
Right.
so they aired the second episode first,
Well, 'cause
which
you
was
had-
a train heist.
Well, to be fair, the pilot is an hour long, and if you're not
It's not the best
into it to
episode
begin
either.
with,
Yeah.
you're kind of like, this is pretty boring.
But still, and then they did it out of order, which is that's the first sign of like, really, are you doing this? And then because I think if you really watch the first episode, you would. I think it would have grown by word of mouth because people
Yeah.
are into it, and then we see something in the next episode. It's a show that really builds on itself and
Right.
introduces you like very slowly, which is a good thing for TV. But on binge watching, it's great.
Well,
right?
that's the thing, though, is like, I honestly can't think of anybody who I know personally who actually watched Firefly when it was on TV.
Yeah, I watched it on video.
For the first time, everyone's first viewing that I know,
I mean,
it was always a friend
that's-
showing it to them on DVD, or somebody who had a copy of it like illicitly on their computer. Like they were like, "You got to check this out."
Yeah, it was a lot like Arrested Development, also of that
Yeah.
era of it shows that everyone adores now, but if every one of us adored it back then it probably
would
wouldn't have
still
got
be on there.
canceled. But it's one of those things that just has grown and got this momentum around it. Like the cult following around Firefly and
yeah.
Serenity is insane. I mean, we just had a story from New York Comic Con that a bunch of like Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk are in Con Men, which is a new series coming
Yeah,
out.
it's
and like,
Tudyk's web series, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
I think it's just Con Man. But
Con
yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
But so the sequel is going to be about 2 Con Men.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I mean, we haven't seen the first season yet,
Yeah,
but sure, why
exactly.
not? Let's plan for 2.
But yeah, it's crazy that having a handful of old Firefly actors on stage together gets people insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
12 years after the show ended and after Serenity came out, like people are still obsessed with this.
Yeah.
And they said the cast said they would be open to to possibly doing a season 2, which is crazy to think.
Yeah. But at
the same
after all
time,
these years, some of them are dead, you know. But
like, just retcon Serenity.
What if the reason that it that we all remember it so fondly is because it didn't have a chance to get bad?
Yes,
Like,
that's one of the key things, and Joss Whedon even says that himself. Like,
I mean, like,
let it just be this small thing we had and we all enjoy.
Exactly.
And it was never went bad. There's no like lost season 6 or anything like that.
Right.
Season 6 was okay.
I already declared Lost the greatest art of all time.
Just art in general.
Yeah,
you did mention Serenity, and that's one of those things that never happens. Like, oh my god, I love this show so much. It's so good, great characters. We never got an ending or found out really what the Ravagers were about, and we got a movie by Joss Whedon, his first movie he ever directed, to finish out the story, and he did. That's a great movie.
Yeah.
That's how I actually got introduced to it. Is that I saw Serenity first.
Weird.
And then I found out there was a series.
Well, it's funny because I remember I hadn't watched the series before Serenity came out either, and I remember seeing a trailer for it. I was like, oh, what the hell is this piece of crap? And I didn't watch it until like 2 years after I'd actually seen the series. Yeah, I didn't watch Serenity until probably 2008, maybe 9.
Yeah, I didn't cry at the Leaf in the Wind part when I first watched it, but then I went back to watch the series and rewatched it. And I was like, no! Don't take him away. I also have
that
to
movie has
mention
so many
that
feels.
I don't think they aired even every episode they had filmed, but now if you go watch it on DVD, you can see all of them.
Yeah.
And I think the last episode is when I think it's kind of like a bounty hunter.
Yeah, he shows up and he gets floated off into space.
But I loved that ending on that episode because he systematically took out each crew member one by one, and we kind of got to learn because he knew things about them. So each character got their own sort of like send-off in a way of like we were reminded of what we liked about them, teased about maybe things we didn't know, and then the show wrapped up. So I thought, even though it ended on an ill note, I thought its
finale was poignant.
It was great.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna have to go back and watch it this week.
I'm
now.
getting it.
I'm getting all feelsy. I'm like all nostalgic. I'm like, oh, I want to go hang out with Hoburn Washman. Or what's his name? Hoburn Wash. Just Wash. Well, I thought he had a first name too.
Washman.
Washman.
Hoburn Washtub.
Who washes the Washman?
The other washers, obviously.
All right, on that note, that wraps up our look back at everything that made 2002 awesome. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for my panel, Joshua, John, and Marty. My name is Damon. Stay tuned for more from IGN on the history of awesome.